If you live in the middle of the country, chances are you have a septic tank. But will it pass inspection by the Department of the Environment? And if it doesn't, could it cost you thousands of euro to put right?
It's not something you boast about when you go to the pub. You don't come along and say, God, I'm having fierce problems with my septic tank.
These systems are a health hazard on a very localised scale, close to people's houses.
The same costs don't apply to people in urban Ireland, so why should rural Ireland pay for this?
Most city dwellers never have to worry about what happens after they flush. But for over 40% of the population that live in the countryside, what happens next is a totally different story. There are over 400,000 rural households not connected to a sewage system. Their waste goes to a septic tank on the property, which the owner has to make sure is working properly. A new registration fee of €50 will be levied in 2012 to pay for an inspection. And if the system isn't operating as it should, the homeowner will have to pay the cost of getting it up to standard. But how does the system work?
A septic tank has two component parts, the holding tank itself and the percolation area that comes after that. The septic tank will hold the sludge, the solid sludge that comes out of the house, and it means that there's very little solid material entering the ground. But there's a lot of water that has to go into the ground and be dispersed into the ground and soak away every day. From your average house with maybe 5 people, you're talking 500-600 litres a day has to go into the ground in a very small area every day for the lifetime of that house.
In theory, every septic tank should be able to work no problem. But in practice, things can go wrong. And when they do, it ain't pretty. Dairy farmer Eddie Kenny built a new house 10 years ago, but his septic tank began to cause problems very early on. Fortunately, he had the farm machinery to deal with the sludge, but it wasn't a pleasant job pumping out raw sewage every couple of months.
Well, it's no problem. You had a vacuum tanker on the farm, but you still had to, it was a chore of doing it and you realise it's not working. Yeah. So something had to be done.
And not the most pleasant job in the world either.
No, there's nobody putting their hands up and saying, I'll do that, no. The old septic tanks had to cope with maybe one toilet in the house, one shower, a bath once a week maybe. And now I have these girls in the house who nearly need a shower 3 times a day. Yeah.
With vastly increased water usage and our wet soils and climate, more and more septic tanks are not working as they should. They have to be pumped out far more often than the 3 to 5 year interval that is recommended. Engineer Dermot O'Reilly sees the problem every single day.
People only realise that something is going wrong when it starts to back up to the house. When they flush the toilet, it doesn't go anywhere. Or perhaps it starts rising through the ages in their backyard. Guesstimating the number of septic tanks that might be giving trouble in this country, I would say anywhere between 200,000 and 300,000, especially tanks that are in over maybe 10 to 12 years.
One of the big risks from septic tanks not working is the risk of water pollution, especially where there are wells nearby.
The fact that our well is quite close, we can't really afford to have it not working. Now, the water quality is good, but if we keep going the way we're going, it won't be.
Obviously, this sort of situation needs to be cleaned up. And that means effectively tackling it on a countrywide basis. In essence, rectifying these is going to mean better quality of drinking water, both in a local sense, and it's also going to mean better water quality on a national level through the drains, the streams, and then the rivers.
Nearly 10 years ago, an EU water directive became law here, but Ireland never actually lived up to its commitments under the law, with the result that some of our water became undrinkable because it was literally a health hazard. Ireland was prosecuted in the European courts for not protecting the water supply and people's health adequately. Recently, the department announced an inspection fee of €50 to be charged for every single septic tank. If the system is not working as it should, and many are not, then the householder will have to bring it up to standard. Eddie Kenny has decided to install a secondary treatment system to clean the water even more.
We have the first tank here, which has been in for about 12 years. What we've done here, put in the second tank, and now we're joining the 2 tanks together so that the water goes from 30% to 97-98% clear, and it's then pumped to the percolation area.
Installing and upgrading a septic tank is a big job and doesn't come cheap.
It'll cost $3,000 for the tank itself, and probably another 700 or 800 on top of that for the percolation area, and then have a digger to pay there for the day as well, and he's not going to be cheap, even in these times.
If you look at the inspection charge, which is €50, which on the face of it sounds like not a lot, but the problem here is it a once-off payment? And we're saying to Minister Hogan it must be a once-off payment. It's still 22 million taken out of rural Ireland. On top of that, then you've got to retrofit your septic tank, rebuild it, bring it back up to a spec. That could cost anything up to €5,000, €6,000, €7,000, depending on the system and how much of an upgrade that's involved.
The irony of the situation now is that if the government had enforced EU laws 10 years ago, hundreds of thousands of houses would now have proper systems, and our water quality would meet EU standards.
A lot of planning happened in rural Ireland, all over Ireland. No proper sewage systems put in place. We have a catch-up job to do right across the country, not just in rural Ireland.
In 1992, France passed a law in order that the 14 million tanks that they have would be inspected over the next 10 or 15 years. Now, they're just finishing that procedure at the moment, but it's led to a huge impact on the water quality in France, and also then on the human health effects.
A grant scheme along the lines of the home insulation scheme to help people retrofit rural homes with proper septic tank systems could boost the economy, create jobs and clean up the environment, but is highly unlikely in the current climate.
This is a big problem. It's going to have to be resolved. There's going to be money generated, there's going to be employment generated. We're saying to the government they've got to put in place a proper retrofit scheme that's going to support the people who have to do this job.
In the same way as the government introduced grants to improve, let's say, slurry capacity for farmers, they probably need to address this particular problem, because yes, people are in dire straits at the moment and there's not a lot of money out there, but it is the environment, and the environment is everybody's responsibility.
Pollution is something none of us want to condone or can condone. Let's get in there, let's get rural Ireland to work sorting out this problem.
While it's clear that the cost of bringing our septic tanks up to scratch is going to run into the tens of millions of euro, there could be an even bigger price to pay if we sit on this issue any longer.
Well, it's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it.